Thank you for joining for this session. It's really exciting to see a bunch of different people here, so I'm excited for what we have planned. My name is Jared Reynolds. So I lead Due North Co-working, and I sort of just mentioned within that kickoff panel, within Due North Co-working is a physical co-working space, and we're based in downtown Lyndonville. So we have a physical, 4,000 square foot space there, open to entrepreneurs, small businesses, remote workers that get memberships. And then within Due North, we organize a range of entrepreneur programs. So we have a program called Kickstart in UK, which is sort of a regionally focused incubator in the Northeast Kingdom. We have a pitch competition coming up on October 5th. 12 sort of businesses and ideas from throughout the Northeast Kingdom will be pitching in St. Johnsbury. And then 2 years ago, we started this forestry accelerator. Before, Due North used to organize a forestry hackathon. So for a couple of years, each year, there would be a challenge and teams would come together to solve this challenge and kind of develop make-believe businesses. And then out of that, sort of this forestry accelerator evolved over several years. And so last year was the first year of this accelerator, had 7, finished with 6 companies, and then right now our second cohort of this accelerator is going on. And Due North is an entity of the new Vermont State University. To kind of showcase some exciting stuff that's happening in Vermont, 3 very different businesses at different stages doing different things. So they'll do sort of a brief presentation of what they're doing. At the end of each of those, we'll just have like 7 or so, I think I set aside 15 minutes, questions, just for questions that you might have about their businesses, something that you're wondering. So that will be the second part. And then the final part builds off a little bit on that sort of panel or whatever we had this morning there, that kickoff panel, of just sort of a discussion. So I was thinking the second part, sort of opportunity for questions specifically to these businesses. And then the final part was looking at opportunities to better support businesses in Vermont, just a discussion. And so bring up the 3 businesses, we'll set up some chairs, they'll come back up, I'll probably kick us off with a question, and then just open it up to everybody here for questions that are a little bit higher level about challenges, opportunities to support all types of businesses in the forest and wood products industry in Vermont. And then we'll just do final thoughts and a wrap up. So just to set the stage, I kind of already introduced Due North, but this is Due North Co-working. So not really talking about this, but I just wanted to set where this accelerator exists within Due North. So we have our physical co-working space and are always sort of looking at opportunities to better support economic development, businesses, entrepreneurs within the Northeast Kingdom, and then specifically with our forestry accelerator, really throughout the state, region, and nationally. So this Forestry Accelerator is a 4-month program for startup companies that are commercializing new and improved products, services, or technology in the forest and wood industry. And so when we started it last year, thought a lot and did many interviews with businesses, service providers, entrepreneurs, both within the forest industry and outside of it, to figure out what approach we should take. So within accelerators, there are many accelerators around the country. A lot kind of have this software model. They work with software startups. They evolved out of that, and they're sort of based on this business model canvas for people that have worked with that before, on like launch your startup, make it happen, and then just iterate. You might fail, but you can just fix it. It's a software company. So we try to think like, what's unique about the forest industry and what type of program would work best for the unique startups or emerging entrepreneurs, businesses in the forest industry. And so we work with this company, EcoSpecies, that also runs DeltaClimb, which is the Burlington-based climate change accelerator, or energy accelerator. And we thought this curriculum was a really good fit, and because it's a little more hard tech focused, so it recognizes that a lot of forest-based businesses can't just launch and fail and iterate, that they really need to spend more time understanding their markets. There's often significant capital costs. And so it's a different type of industry with hard tech. So we do have some software companies. It still works. I think it's still like a good curriculum, but it's a little bit more focused on hard tech businesses. And then the second part was really trying to engage industry. I think especially last year and some this year, we had a lot of businesses that were coming from outside the forest industry and saw this market opportunity to develop a company within the forest industry. But they had sort of said, we don't have a lot of connections in the forest industry, we don't really know what's going on, we have this idea. Maybe they had like studied forestry in college or spent a year as a forester early on in their career, and then they left and did something else. And so we're kind of combining these interests. And so the second part we're really interested with the Accelerator is trying to build connections between these emerging startups, innovators, and the industry. First of all, just to build those connections, to get feedback, guidance for their businesses. And so we developed these 3 focus areas that we saw as opportunities or challenges in Vermont that came out of a lot of conversations. So we're really interested in businesses that were developing products that use low-grade wood, byproducts, chips, dust, resin, technology that would improve forest management, sales, so kind of what came up in the conversation this morning, and then any advances to wood heat, wood energy, or wood fuels. So even if a company is participating in the Accelerator that's not from Vermont, hopefully they're developing a technology that is applicable to Vermont or would help Vermont. And so it sort of had those 2 focus areas to specifically work with companies in the northern forest region. Vermont and New Hampshire was sort of what we specifically identified, or companies from outside the region that are developing a technology that would be useful or beneficial to this region in some way. So you see a couple familiar faces in here, but we just had our first sprint. So this schedule of the Accelerator is, it's about 4 months, 3.5 months. I mentioned it's a hybrid program, so we do some in person and some virtual. We kicked off at the end of July with this 2-day virtual kickoff, we called it. Do several sort of webinars and panels throughout. We do 2 in-person sprints and then 1 virtual sprint. So the first in-person sprint is 4 days. All the companies come to Vermont. This was at the Berg Mountain Hotel in Eastburg. Our second sprint is 3 days virtually, and then the final sprint is October 30th to November 1st. All the companies come back to Vermont to sort of wrap up, do a final presentation. And so this is a couple of things. I mean, one goal is just to have some fun, share some drinks, connect, talk, both within the companies that are participating and with outside experts that come in. And then this was from a bunch of experts that sort of came in and companies doing their business case presentations. So we did a 10-minute presentation, we got questions, feedback, guidance from guests that joined to sort of showcase that goal of really building connections between startups, entrepreneurs, emerging companies, and people with these specific expertise that can provide that really valuable feedback to companies. The other thing I think that makes this program a little bit unique is that it really leverages that peer feedback, and so we have some prize money at the end that is peer selected. So throughout the program, peers, Silver Crow was our peer selected winner last year, but companies rank or score each other, maybe not rank, but score. They know the most about the other companies in the program. They're often, or always, sort of hearing their presentations, learning about kind of the details of that company, and so they're really best suited to provide that feedback of that assessment. And so that's sort of unique among accelerators, that sort of peer ranking or peer scoring and feedback. And so last year and this year, this is the companies that have participated. 2 are here, but it's really a range of companies in those 3 focus areas that I highlighted before. Some technology, products, and a range of stages, and a couple of energy and fuel companies. There's biochar, and a range of stages. So I'd say within accelerators, mostly it's a little bit earlier stage. A lot of companies that don't yet have any revenue, but it's a huge range of some pre-revenue, initial revenue, and then some companies that have been around for a while that are just sort of looking at where opportunities might exist. And then within these companies, also, people from the Northeast, California, Vancouver, Washington State, Pennsylvania, New York, Maine, so a huge geographic representation of different companies, but all either from the Northeast or addressing a challenge. And then based on the sort of that kickoff panel this morning, thinking about this accelerator was this multi-year process of thinking like, what would be the best fit for the forest and the wood industries? How can we support these? But realized that it is, it's just one program. It's not addressing all of the issues or all of the lowering that barrier to launching a new business. And so right now I was thinking like, well, what else could we be doing in the coming years to better support businesses? Building connections with existing service providers that are doing really cool work and really impactful work, and then see this opportunity for us to address some of these key areas. And it somewhat replicates sort of this pipeline we've built out with some of our programs that are not forestry focused. We've sort of looked at supporting early stage ideas, incubation of these ideas, hosting events to sort of showcase what's happening, or we organize a pitch competition, and then looking at ways to increase access to capital for some of the most promising businesses that are emerging in the forest industry. And so really now looking at how can we sort of build a pipeline with partners in this conference initiative that best supports startups, businesses, and innovation and commercialization within the forest industry. Does anyone have any questions, I guess, specifically about this program? Yeah, sure.
Who thought of the idea?
That's a good question. So it was based off, there is not a similar accelerator in the US, but there is one in Sweden, which I'm forgetting the name of, but somewhat modeled off of that. I think it was like looking at this program, Sweden and Northern Europe has been really successful at supporting startups in the forest industry, so looked at how we can replicate something like that in the US. Had a conversation with them early on, and they said, sounds like a good idea. Let us know if you're successful at making this happen, and we'd love to talk further. And so that was kind of like an early conversation, but Christine McGowan was really involved in also thinking about the type of program that could be impactful with her knowledge about sort of the ecosystem within Vermont.
Yeah. Kind of two-part question. Where does the prize money come from? And then, actually three-part, sorry. Are there sort of pros and cons of having that sort of incentive at the end versus an accelerator after that? And then the third is the idea of, at the end of an accelerator, putting folks in front of investors and how that might be similar or different in the forest industry to like the tech industry.
Yeah. So we have a mix of funding. Funding for the program comes from Northern Border Regional Commission, the Working Lands Enterprise Board. We have a recent grant from the USDA, and then prize money has come from sponsors that have come in and sponsored the program.
Distinct from the programmatic funding.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because it's challenging to use that funding. And I think there are pros and cons to prize money. It is not enough money to make all that much of a difference for any business, but I think it's just is somewhat of an incentive.
It also feels different to be funded, and I think that peer voting thing is a special kind of vote of confidence, I think, especially if there's a relationship on it.
Yeah, so it's unique of putting people up in front of investors and having them choose a company that is successful, because that always seems a little bit fake. They're really just guessing, and it is not understanding the business. It's just sort of who is able to put together the best presentation, as opposed to learning about a business over a 3-month period and really understanding the details of it. So I prefer that. I mean, both are important. Businesses also need to know, I guess, how to speak efficiently about their business in a short amount of time. But I think it's more important that a business is actually a good idea, or there's any demand for it, it is addressing a problem or a market opportunity. What was the last question?
Was that this?
Okay, cool. So I want to kind of come back at the end and can take more questions. But really, I just wanted to provide that brief introduction, sort of lay a foundation. But the goal was really to just showcase some really interesting businesses that are happening in Vermont. So we have 3 here, 2 of which have participated in the Accelerator, and 1 that has not, but I think is still really cool and is great to get up here. And so we have Silvacura, Mass Kingdom, and Treeline Terrains. So I mentioned they're just gonna do a brief presentation. I'm not gonna answer all of your questions, but really just to start a conversation and showcase what's happening. So I want to turn it over. So first, I'm just actually gonna go in this order. Jim, and then Josh, and then Nathaniel. And I mentioned we'll have a couple minutes, 5 to 7 minutes for questions afterwards.